You're listening to Edge Radio TV. The views and opinions expressed in this program are that of the hosts or guests, and not the Edge Radio Network or its advertisers or affiliates.
Well, hello, and welcome. This is Oscar Hines. Welcome to the Natural Nation Network here on the Edge Radio TV. It is going to be an amazing conversation. I am absolutely delighted to have joining us live in studio today, Miss Diane Wilkes-Trivett, the author of My Journey to Just Be Me. That's a big statement.
It is.
That's what we're trying to figure out our whole lives. So for those who don't know you, Diane, tell us a little bit about sort of your beginnings and your realization and sort of how this journey's evolved for you.
First, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it and give me opportunity to have this platform to talk about it. Well, it's been a long journey, and it's a journey that continues. The best way that I would say it started in terms of this platform that I have now is at the age of 9 years old. My mom noticed that I had this little spot in the middle of my head, and she didn't worry about it at first as a kid, but as she saw it progressing, she took me to our family doctor. Her family doctor said, you need to take her to see a dermatologist. So my mom took me to a dermatologist, and my mom, just to preface that, she was a single mom. We lost my dad a few years back, and so she took me to this dermatologist, who's actually a well-known doctor now that was noted in Black history books and everything, Dr. Lawless. And he told my mom that I was diagnosed with vitiligo, and at the age of 9, I was the youngest case that he had ever treated.
Wow.
And he made it clear that there was no cure for it. So from the age of 9, I started saying that for me, it wasn't hard until I had to change schools, because I was in a private school initially. And so those children saw me, this vitiligo, should I say, progress. But then I had to change to a public school, and changing to the public school was hard as a 9-year-old. And it was just that first day of walking in class, and to this day I remember the little girl that was standing in front and the look on her face. So it was difficult. So we went from, fast forward from 9 to, of course, 16. When you're going into high school, you go through the change. College, you go through the change, and you have all these feelings that living with this disease, or everybody has a different disability, whatever you want to call it, that you're not going to have the life that you thought you would have. I wanted to be a model. I wanted to be on stage and do this, that, and the other. And I thought that this would inhibit me from doing so. And so I took that direction and put it into writing. I've been writing since I was a kid. Nice. I had diaries, journals, whatever. And as I went through that process, and as I got older, I went through some bad relationships. Then I got married, finally got married. I had kids, got married, remarried, should I say. And my husband now told me the gift I had in writing, which I didn't think of it as a gift. I thought of it as a hobby, because my mom would always tell me, you cannot make a living writing. Wow. You got to find a job. And so that opened up some doors for me to write music and hear that music played. And then it was just like God just told me, he said, I want you to write about your journey.
Wow.
All of it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And so I started writing the book probably in 2015, 16, about 16. It was right after my mom died. And the book was published in December of 2019. And it was a roller coaster ride. I mean, I've had so much happen, and it's a lot to say to tell you in a little short period of time. But within all that time, I wrote the book. I started a foundation called the Houston Vitiligo Awareness Movement for individuals and family members who have vitiligo. Just a support group to help individuals who are to learn to live with the disease, and especially children, because I knew the impact that it had on me.
So going back to that moment, because you say that you saw that little girl look at you a certain way, you know, you're 9, 10 years old at the time. And that's probably the hardest thing. I remember a young man in our class that had vitiligo. I didn't understand it, and I didn't make fun of him or anything, but I saw other kids doing it. I didn't ever like it. I didn't think it was right. But the thing that was most, I guess, disheartening was that the kids thought if they touched them, they could get it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, was that part of your experience that was?
It was definitely my experience, because I think when something is new to any individual and they don't know, or they're not knowledgeable about something, they think, even their parents think, is that something my kids can catch? And I didn't know even at the time. It's since I've started the organization. I mean, I knew, because I had my family, I had friends that I grew up with, nothing ever happened to them. But again, knowledge is really power. And I realized that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I made part of that platform, because I have kids in which we call HFAM, short for our organization, who were going through some traumatic times, trying to deal with kids in school who didn't understand what was happening to their skin. And I wanted them to feel empowered and be able to talk about what they were experiencing, not break down in tears, or not want to go to school because I don't want to get teased. You know, I was called some horrible names. I was called Spot, Raccoon. The boys would cut out notebook paper and put it up to their face, you know, because at the time, my vitiligo has moved, but when I was first diagnosed, it was around my eyes. So you don't realize it as a kid how traumatizing it is until you start getting older. And it's funny that you're accepting it, you start accepting it, but then you look back at what you went through to get where you are.
Yes. And
it's a lot.
See, the big challenge, and I think a lot of people don't always realize that your sense of identity, it's forming right from the beginning, because we're acculturated, from 0 to 6 until we start kindergarten. You know, we're in a bubble with our social constructs inside of a family. But then you go outside of that.
Peers.
You know, when I came to this, I'm from Costa Rica, and when I came to this country, I was 4 years old, and I remember I had an accent. And when I started talking, the kids were like, "You talk funny." I was like, "No, you talk funny. What are you talking about? I don't know why you're telling me." And these kids were laughing at me, and then of course my name was Oscar. You know, Oscar Mayer Wiener.
Yes,
and
of course.
Sesame Street just came out. Oscar the Grouch. I'm like, I got your Oscar right here. You know, but the thing about that was that some of those were things that I could control. Like, I started mastering the King's English, so now I talk better than most Americans. But it was sort of an internal process. But you can't hide your situation, because it's very much an external process.
Well, as a child, I definitely couldn't hide it, and I had to accept it. I mean, again, I think the fact that when I was in private school, they saw me one color. So as the spots started forming, I don't recall it being anything that was said. Maybe, as a kid, they probably say, "What's that?" or whatever, but they knew Diane before vitiligo. But going into that new school, they didn't know what it was. They just saw the spots. And so at that time, you weren't covering. My mom was not going to allow that at my age. And so I looked forward to getting older, because I knew that I could start wearing makeup to cover it up. And there are many people who do, and I did up until 2018. I covered. You wouldn't even know that I had it on. And the only reason that you see me today is as a result again of the organization I had one of our little girls, Coco. She went to school and we went to speak at an event, and she shared how she was being teased in school and called a twice baked potato and all that.
Wow.
And I teach now, and I was covering going to school every day, to teach, my students and all, and they knew me as Mrs. Tribbett covered. And that year, I made a conscious decision, and I said, how am I a leader of this organization, and I'm telling these kids that they can go in front of their friends and they can be who they are, embrace who they are, and rock the skin they're in.
Yes, yes.
And I'm covering every day. And I teach in middle school. So, middle schoolers to me, they are.
That's the real deal
that's the
right
real
there.
Deal
Yeah,
right there.
That's that adolescence flair.
Yeah, so I'm like, this school year or that school year, I said, I am going to not wear makeup. I'm going to go in consciously without makeup, and it's just going to be me. If I have to explain it, that's good, because then I open up that knowledge for my kids.
Yes.
So that year when school first started, I went in, and the first few days are fine because you go in with your colleagues or whatever, but when it was time that day, first day of school, for the students to come in, I just expected this weird interaction with them, like, what is going on? What happened to you, Miss Tribbett?
Yeah.
The day, it was as if it was nothing to them.
Wow.
They were like, I was still Miss Tribbett.
Yes.
I'm sure they had their questions, but they
Sure.
didn't look at me any differently. They didn't treat me any differently. They were the same kids, that left the school year before.
Yes.
And so I think that I put more pressure on myself,
Right.
which helped me to learn to help our kids and other individuals that are dealing with this, that we do put more trauma, more pressure, more expectations upon ourselves than what people really look at. And now I have that opportunity to share that part of my journey and help somebody else.
Wow. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Natural Nation Network. We are talking with Miss Diane Wilkes Tribbett. The first part of this journey we've just started unpacking, which is the vitiligo, and that. I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we want to define this a little bit in terms of what the physical aspects are, and talk about some of the other transitions that you've had to make here. So, folks, stay where you are. We'll be back in just a moment here on Edge Radio Network, where truth still matters. Back in a moment.
The Natural Nation Network is really about taking control of your health physically, spiritually, emotionally, even intellectually, because there's so much out there in misinformation. There's a lot of people now that are suffering from all sorts of diseases that they really wouldn't have to suffer for if they had better information. And that's what we're here to do. Provide information that can save lives.
The mind and the body are totally connected.
Health can be really serious, and sometimes we just have to lighten it up a little bit while we're still providing substantive information.
And my sort of mantra on the salsa dance floor is kind of similar. I tell somebody, if you make a mistake twice, it becomes a move. Okay.
Tune into Natural Nation every Tuesday at 11 a.m.
Edge Radio TV is holding auditions for new show hosts. Are you a subject matter expert, professional, influencer, book author, thought leader, or business owner with an educational or motivational platform? Then we want to meet you. Send a link of some of your work to edgeradio20@gmail.com and be sure to put audition in the subject line. Join the Edge Radio TV family. Edge TV, because truth still matters.
And we are back. This is the Natural Nation Network here on the Edge TV network. We are having a fascinating conversation with Miss Diane Wilkes-Trivett. I wanted to get back into this conversation a little bit on the vitiligo. There's plenty to unpack, but we're still here for just a moment. So, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm misquoting anything. Well, first of all, I used to be a trichologist, which is a hair and scalp specialist. And I saw instances when people had lupus of certain areas of vitiligo, areas of white patches that would occur. And I started sort of delving into it and understanding that this was an autoimmune disorder where essentially your body is attacking, if you will, the melanated areas of your skin, and consequently you lose the melanin in that area. So during the break, we're just talking about these different aspects, and there's some things that people with vitiligo have to be really careful about. Tell us about that.
Definitely have to be careful of being in the sun. The sun our skin is very sensitive to sunlight, which can cause sunburn. And as I was sharing with you, I'm a very outdoor person. I love the sun. I love going to the beach. And no matter if I put on sunscreen or not, I have a tendency to burn. I still do it, but I have a tendency to burn. And that happens to the majority of individuals who have vitiligo. We talk about that in our groups and our leadership meetings. That is definitely one of the biggest inhibitors of having it, especially if you're outdoors, an outdoors person. And sadly, it affects your mental health for a number of people because they won't go outdoors. They don't want to, not only the fact that they don't want to experience the sunburn or whatever, but they don't want to deal with the stares and the questions and all. And it's like even though there's a physical element, as you want to say, it has so many mental repercussions from it as well.
Wow. Well, when you mention the mental aspect and just being, there's a disease, it's a condition, and I'm trying to recall the name of it, but people that when the winter time comes, they become depressed. And that happens because they're not able to be exposed to sunlight. So there's light therapies. They literally have lights like this that they sit under for a couple of hours a day just to feel good. So you're talking about the mental aspects of the disease. So let me ask you though, and I don't know, again, this may be a little out of the purview that you have, but since we know that vitiligo is an autoimmune disorder, there are other autoimmune disorders. There's things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and lupus, and just a series of those. Do these cross connect?
They absolutely do. If you have vitiligo, you usually have had some other autoimmune disease, or you have something paired up with it. I had most of the individuals that I know had lupus or have lupus. We have had some with fibromyalgia, various autoimmune diseases. I don't recall ever having anything that, other than the vitiligo, that was considered autoimmune related. But that's definitely something that we have seen as a common connector for vitiligo. Interesting. Well, it connects dots for me because again, when I was in the hair and scalp business, I used to see different issues, and there's something called alopecia areata, which are spots of hair that fall out. Or there's like a bald spot. And people that have alopecia areata, I explain to them, this is an autoimmune disorder. This is your body's attacking the hair follicle. And my brother pointed something out. This was many years ago. Pointed something out in the back of his head. And he said, man, I have this weird bald spot back here. Take a look at this. I said, man, that's alopecia areata. And explained it to him and so on. And it wasn't a big deal for him. He just cut it like, men can trim it. But later on, right around his fingernails, he started losing pigmentation. And we noticed it and said, what is that? And he was like, man, I think I've got vitiligo.
we were shocked. So both him and my nephew has it right here, grows a mustache, that helps to cover it, right? A beard and mustache. But that is something apparently that does run in our family that I wasn't aware of until my brother first got it.
It's weird because there's nobody that my mom or dad on my mom or dad's side that had vitiligo. I'm the first. So it was weird before me because as I started having kids, I was concerned that they were going to have it, or I have grandkids now, same thing. And I have one grandson that, what is it that he has the skitch when they're eczema. So, yeah. But his skin kind of like gives that look that you're going to have that vitiligo, the light spots.
Yes.
But we don't know, it's still a possibility because we do have individuals who have, like you, folks in their family that have it.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, eczema is also semi-autoimmune in some respects, but what's kind of, what I started recommending, because after I studied hair over time, I started to, and for those listening and those who have concerns around this, started researching some internal things that can be done. And one of the things that we normally suggest is to get the body in a state of alkalinity. So if somebody's dealing with any autoimmune disorder, irrespective of what it is, if the body becomes alkaline, if it's not acidic, then our body has the ability essentially to rebalance and get back to homeostasis. So it could mitigate, not eliminate, but it could mitigate any issues with it, because again, your body is essentially getting miscues and attacking parts of itself.
Right.
Just like someone rejecting an organ was the analogy I used to use. If someone had a heart transplant or something, the organ's being rejected because the body views it as a foreign matter. It's a similar thing, but what we found is that when someone gets back into alkalinity and you get a pH test strip, you test your saliva. If you're acidic, anything below 7 is acidic, anything above 7 is alkaline. Once a person changed their diet and the alkalinity was dark green leafy vegetables, people aren't crazy about that, but also green food powders and supplements like that. And then staying away from the sugars and the starches and the sodas and the things that make us acidic. Literally what happens is that the progression of the autoimmune disorder ceases or slows down substantially when someone reaches that state. So that's just advice for those who might be dealing with it. Now, I don't know that any substantive studies have been done that correlate whether the progression of vitiligo is affected by this. I don't know, but I was curious about something you said because I'd not heard this before, and it was something that out of social politeness people would never ask. But you said that it was around your eyes and then it moved.
Yes.
So tell us about this movement. I never heard that. I thought it was when it was there, it was there.
No, mine has definitely moved. So I guess let me premise it with this, is that when I was diagnosed, what I learned probably a few years ago is that when our body is stressed,
yes,
our vitiligo, it seems to get more aggressive. Mine had, like, I have pictures actually, I wish I had them, where again it was around my eyes, and then I didn't have it on my cheeks at all.
Wow.
And what happened to let me know that when mine is starting to progress is I get this real itchy skin and peeling, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's coming again.
Wow.
And so what I learned is that I have stress factors that affect me, and that happens to a lot of individuals who have vitiligo. Let me just go back real quick on what you were saying about diet. We do have a group leader out of Ohio who changed his diet and saw a massive difference in his skin regaining his pigment. So that, as you said, is not any true studies out there, but he has proven that, himself, and we've seen it with our own eyes as well. But going back, so for me, the stress is a big factor, and I try, my husband will tell me differently, but I try to keep my stress minimalized, but it does happen. But what happened for me is it gave me a recall back on when mine started.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when I was a kid, I recalled the fact that around that age where my vitiligo had started, I was being sexually abused by someone in our family, not direct family, but related to family. And I had suppressed that so much that I hadn't even realized until I started delving into the organization and meeting with the doctors, dermatologists, and that are in different groups or associated with different organizations. And it started coming out, and it was a commonality between so many people. Some went through it because they were in abusive relationships, some before the divorce, the death of a loved one. And as I started seeing it, when it started progressing, it was always at a time when something very stressful was going on in my life. That happened, and we didn't know what caused it. Now I know that probably had a very big impact on why it happened.
There's a correlation.
There's a
there.
definite correlation.
I want to dive into that a little bit more, because that affects people in different ways and under different circumstances. But what you're saying, that correlation is very real. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're here with Miss Diane Wilkes Tribbitt. We are talking about the subject of surviving some different childhood challenges, vitiligo being one of them, and now we've got some more to unpack. So, folks, don't go anywhere. We're here with Natural Nation Network. We'll be back in just a moment.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
Don't push me because I'm close to the edge.
I'm trying not to lose my head.
Hey, this is the Talk About Unity show where I bring the talk.
And I bring the unity.
And together we talk about unity. Unity is what matters.
Come on.
And right now in our country, that's what we've got to do. So we do that here at Talk About Unity on the Edge Radio Network. Be with us every week.
It's going to be awesome. It always is. And I tell you what, the more we seek first to understand, then be understood, we make progress.
And we like to do that. And that's why everybody's on the brink. We love what we do at Edge Radio because everybody's on the edge. We bring them back from the edge and we bring the unity. So we're just glad. Edge Radio Network every Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Talk About Unity, because here at Edge Radio Network, truth still matters.
And we are back. This is the Natural Nation Network here on Edge Radio TV. We are speaking with the author of My Journey to Just Be Me, Miss Diane Wilkes Tribbitt. This book chronicles your process through surviving not just a condition, a skin condition, but just before our break, you mentioned that there's a correlation. Can you unpack that a little bit and sort of what your realization was around that?
So what I was sharing is that stress is a big factor for individuals with vitiligo. We have seen across the board that stress will start your vitiligo to progress. In some cases, it has caused the vitiligo. I noticed in several situations, as I said, a traumatic situation that happened when I was a child, when I gave birth to my daughters, traumatic on my body, so that it happened then. The death of my mom was traumatic.
Yes.
And so it's something that you try to steer away from, and we're learning now that how important. Before it was a lot of discussion about how can we find something to stop the progression of vitiligo with medication. But we held the conference here for the first time. Our organization held the World Conference here in 2019. And one of the requirements, I won't say requirements, but one of the things I asked that we definitely talk about was the mental health piece of it, because that's something that we didn't talk about.
Yes.
We always wanted to talk about the medical side of it, but we didn't talk about how the mental health it started at the beginning of the disease as well. And so it's so important that that mental health aspect is discussed, is brought out, that the awareness is there about how important it is to not only talk about the wellness of the physical body, but the wellness of the mind.
Wow. Now, you're bringing out something, and that's a part of what this particular platform, we call it the Natural Nation, is about. Solutions to both the mental and the physical ailments. And something that I think is really, again, something that warrants more exploration is that there is a direct correlation between emotion and the physical, what we call physical causation. So I authored a book as well on communication, and one of the things about it was that we talk about how, for example, I was up in front of literally 500 breast cancer survivors. And as a wellness practitioner, I was the only guy there representing natural solutions. There were oncologists and palliative care specialists, and they had all this alphabet soup behind their name. And the conversation came around, and I was the last person to speak. It was Saturday. Everybody was tired. And I said something that absolutely transformed the room. And it was something I almost did as an afterthought, but it was based on something that I had studied and read. This was 10 years ago. But it talked about emotional causation. I asked the ladies, in the privacy of your own minds, think about which breast the cancer started in. And now I saw them processing that, and I said, okay, now, if it, according to Eastern philosophy, if it started in your right breast, it's an indication that a man or in your life has likely hurt you, and you've held on to the resentment. And as a result of that, it starts eating away at the self. It could be a father, a son, a husband, an ex-husband, boyfriend, whatever, but you held on to it. If it's the left side, the female energy, it could be a mother, a sister, or most significantly, it could be yourself that you've held on to this anger. And as a result, it created this condition. I said, so we know there's physiological reasons why cancer starts. It's the perfect storm of bad food and bad environment and a bad set of circumstances, but the journey within is significantly important.
Most definitely.
And it sounds like, from what you're saying, Diane, that you've realized this correlation in your own experience, because it happens every time there's trauma in your life.
Definitely. One of the things I hadn't shared yet, again, which was a trauma, is I was probably about 16, and my sister and I were having an argument, and she just burst out and said, "That's why you have a different father than we do." And I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
So when you said all this, it's like I've heard it before, but it's just the way you just presented it with the right, the left, and I'm like, man, okay. So when I was 9, I had the trauma with the assault in a sense, and then around mid-year, 16, I find out I have a different father from my siblings, and that was a very emotional toil on me, because not only to find that out, then to find out who it was, and then to try to start somewhat of a relationship, and that didn't go well at all, and that's a whole nother story. And I never got to fix that relationship because I was so angry, as you were saying, that by the time there was no time, he passed away before anything could happen. Then by the time I wanted to, it was too late.
Yes.
And which is one of the reasons I do stage plays as well. And one of the stage plays, the first stage play I did was Girls Night Out, A Twist of Faith. And it talks about a lot of what we've been talking about. It talks about some girlfriends of mine. There is true stories that were brought to the stage and just kind of intertwined, and about how we all went through different things. The abuse, one friend went through abuse, the physical breast cancer or cancer per se, because I have a friend that went through the breast cancer and then it moved throughout her body. She's still here, thank God. Divorce, another friend, and all of that, how the traumatic pieces of it for each of us, and how it built us into who we are today. Yes. But at the same time, looking at it, what you said, I haven't let go of that. I'm still angry, with my father, but I can't change it because he's not here anymore. I'm still angry with the person that I know. I have not. It's amazing that I have not come in contact with this person, but I know that it's coming. I don't know why, but I know that it's going to happen, and I don't know how I'm going to handle that. In spite of the growth that I've had over the years, it's still that piece, like you were saying, that innermost piece of you, or that innermost, those innermost thoughts and feelings and emotions that I still deal with on a daily basis, which could be part of the reason why I still see the progression of the vitiligo that I have, that comes and goes as it does, because there are some times that are much more difficult than others. And when you don't talk about it, you're suppressing it.
You're suppressing it.
So you don't. And so it's probably one of those things where you need it. They do need to be addressed.
Well, it's funny because I know over the years, and I guess I've probably become a bead wearing hippie, right? but a part of the journey, and I remember taking some yoga classes, and for me, yoga was transformative because I used to have back issues, and I'm very physical. I mean, I used to race motorcycles. I'm a salsa dancer. I'm very active. So having a bad back was not an option. Rollerblading, all this stuff I love to do. And one of the processes in the yoga practice was also a release breath work. But what was interesting about it was that they said, from your mental processing standpoint, release and forgive, continuously put out that forgiveness. And what I found in my own experience was that there were people that I was fortunately never really traumatized, but there were people I realized I had a problem with. I was like, okay, I forgive you. I release that. I let that go. And it was really transformative because at some point, like you were saying, the time where you're through your own process, you have to confront that past, that individual from that past. And what does that look like? Does it look like an expression of anger? Does it look like forgiveness? What does it look like? I mean, what do you think that would look like?
Well, it's funny because in the play, I say, one of the things I do want to do, which I've heard is a healing process and a forgiveness process, is I really want to go to my father's grave and have that conversation that I keep replaying in my head and just saying, this is how you made me feel. And I say this in my book about, I tell him how I go through that anger, those steps of anger with him, and say, you were supposed to be this to me. You were supposed to give me that realization of what it looks like to be a man, to what a man would look like in my life. Right. And I think that affected, and of course, for girls, that is traumatizing, because your father is your first example of what you want in your life. Yes. I didn't have that. Yes. I had it from my older brother, but my older brother was killed in a car accident. So I lost the men that would have provided that were all lost. Mm-hmm. So what I see it is that letting that anger out verbally to him, mm-hmm. and saying, but I forgive you, yes. and I let go, because I can say it on a stage, in a script, I can say it on the stage, but until I do it, yes. and release it, mm-hmm. I think that's the way I see it manifesting, and letting go. There are a number of individuals that I know that I need to forgive, mm-hmm. and let go. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I wrote a song about forgive and let go, yeah. and I'm still learning to let go.
You probably remembered the Oprah quote, and I don't know if I can attribute it to Oprah, but I heard it on her show. This is 10 years ago again, because I ended the conversation in front of those breast cancer survivors with that statement. I said, holding on to that hurt and anger is like taking poison every day, mm-hmm. and wishing someone else would die. Yeah. Because that was so impactful to me. When you think about that, it sounds, mm-hmm. it defies logic. But we all, I think, to some degree, and we, when we listen to the thought leaders of this time, we're all in cognitive dissonance right mm-hmm. now. Yes. So the people around us, when we're dealing with the COVID-19 situation, for those of you who are in other states, Houston has opened up. People don't have to wear masks anymore. Exactly. So there's certain places I wear masks. There's certain places I don't wear masks. My immune system, I try to weaponize it, mm-hmm. so that I'm impervious to some of that, because our bodies really, in my opinion, have the answers to fight any disease if we feed it the right stuff. Mm-hmm. And so from the standpoint of that, I think you see people that are divisive. Like, there are people, I saw this couple, this lady was like, put your mask on and I don't have to wear it anymore. And I'm like, whoa, it's like, and we've sort of gotten to this place societally where there's such intolerance that I read something years ago that I loved and I sort of internalized, which they say, practice the law of allowing. Mm. You allow somebody to be whoever they are. Just allow them to be that without any desire to change. And, as long as they don't infringe on our freedoms, mm-hmm. or our liberties or our safety, mm-hmm. if they do that, then you got to intervene. Mm-hmm. But besides that, we practice the allowing. Yeah. So how much of that type of conversation was being had at the vitiligo conference? Because the forgiveness and the mental work, and because the health part, yeah. I get that, because we're living in this physical world, but what about that other side?
So that it's weird, because the majority of individuals who have vitiligo, they are looking for a cure. And so their focus is on the cure. And so again, 2019 was really the first year that we embarked on talking about the mental health piece of it. And now it's weird, because now I see more and more conversation around the importance of making sure we address mental health with vitiligo. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's definitely something that is now trending, should I say, in our community, in terms of looking at your wellness from the mental health part of it, as well as the physical or physiology part of it, of going for treatments and all. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that, and I'm so glad you gave this platform, because I'm hoping that those individuals who get to see this or know someone with vitiligo will start to, that it'll become more mainstream, yes. of a discussion, yes. about the mental health piece of it. That is my goal with our organization, is to definitely talk about the mental health and the mental wellness, because it's not just, as we were saying, about the kids, right. their mental health. We have older individuals as well who are traumatized by this, and they need to know, if that mental health is just as important as your physical health.
Yes. No, you're spot on, and I mean, I saw it when I did hair analysis with lupus. Lupus was one of those things that for 15 years will be in remission. You don't see it, and then boom. But the person that would have the attack would be there, and then invariably they'll say something like, "Yeah, and I just went through a divorce, and I just, my child was sick," or whatever it was. Something triggered it. So I would love to see that correlation, and maybe getting some of the people that are in the mental health sciences to really embrace this, but not just in the traditional way, because I have a lot of reverence for Eastern philosophy because I've seen it work. I've seen meditation work and yoga and all the different nuances. So it'd be great to be able to sort of start really, meshing into nutrition and mental and emotional health and seeing what kind of effects that has.
Most definitely. And I would love for you to come and talk to our organization.
Let's do it.
Let's do
yeah,
that. They need
absolutely.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And I think it would be very beneficial. And it would be great, the wider scale we can get it out there too. Because it's like I said, it affects anybody, anywhere, any ethnicity, all over the country. We have, these groups. And the more that we talk about it, I think that just opens up that door for folks to understand better that it needs to be discussed.
No, you're exactly right. And the skin from like I said, every physical part of the body correlates to an emotional part, is the external image that we show to the world. It's what the world sees. So it always is like, if there's shame or if there's anger, if there's something, it could physiologically affect it. Some people break out, some people have hives, different things. So it's not just, vitiligo is of course a higher level,
right?
But it's not just emotional, obviously. It's a physiological condition. And so, that correlation is fascinating. This time has gone by very quickly, Diane. Wow. So tell folks how they can connect to you. And this is the book, My Journey to Just Be Me. And I like this, Moments of Reflection with the One I Love. That's pretty cool. So this is the book. This is Miss Diane. How do they get in touch with you?
You can reach me on my email for sure. dlyricinspired@gmail.com. My website is www.dlyricinspired.com. Facebook, any social media, D-Lyric Inspired, or put in my name, Diane Wilkes Tribbitt, and you'll find me as well.
Awesome, Miss Diane Wilkes Tribbitt. It has been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you. I've enjoyed this conversation. This is a big conversation.
Likewise.
We need to expand this conversation. So I'm glad we opened the door to this.
Me too.
And I want to ask folks, those of you watching right now, most of us know people that have this condition because it is 1% of the population,
yes, 1%
right?
1% of the population have it.
So if you know 100 people, one of them have this condition, which means that you need to share this video. You need to share this information by Miss Tribbitt. This can really help transform someone's life. So.
And please, if you know someone, direct them to our organization. They're in Houston. Our organization is the Houston Vitiligo Awareness Movement. You can reach us again. You can come through my name. You'll find it, but it's HoustonVitiligoAwareness.com or Houston Vitiligo Awareness on any social media platform. We are here to provide support, encouragement to individuals and their family members, because it's not just about us. Our family members go through this with us as well.
Yes. Wow. What an awesome mission. I want to thank you. Thank you for what you do and for being so open and transparent with your journey. We really appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me here, Oscar.
Thank you. All right, folks, tune in next week for another amazing conversation on the Natural Nation Network here on Edge Radio TV. Please share, and we'll see you again soon.